And Stephanie's back with some updates on some things she wants to pass on to you. But first, Concerned Citizens of Vermilion Parish meeting is tomorrow night, October 25th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the Vermilion Parish Library in Abbeville. You'll need to come and discuss things that are near and dear to your heart. So, come on out, you Abbevillians, and let your voices be heard.
Vermilion Parish, yay.
Okay. And now I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie to fill y'all in on her latest project. Yes. Steph.
Thank you so much, Mr. Parker, for the microphone. Hello, Acadiana, all you beautiful people in surrounding areas, Ustream, all us good people. Tonight, I want to talk to Lafayette and everyone around locally. This is extremely exciting news for once. Grab a pen and a paper because I'm really, really excited about an event that's going to be held in town. And so while you're getting a pen, I'm going to talk because, Mr. Parker, we kind of need to hurry. So we're going to have a food day in Lafayette, and Mr. Broussard and I are going. Now, it's going to be Hyman, the hill, right there off of Gerard Park Road. So it's going to be on that, let me see. Excuse me, folks.
There's a park there.
Yeah, people know where it is. But it's going to be on Saturday, the 27th of October. It's going to be from 2 to 6. Now, Mr. Broussard and I, what we're going to do for all of you is we're going to bring a notebook, and we're going to take names of all the local farmers. Local farmers are going to be there. Cochon is going to be there. Jolie's Food is going to be there. They're going to have face painting for the kids. And they're going to have, also, you're going to be able to take a potato. This is a pear that Jacob had, and he was nice enough to let me use it. But imagine this is a potato. And so what they're going to do is they're going to cut out little things and cut out the potato, and your children will be able to stick it in a stamp pad and then, and play. So they're going to have the petting zoo and all kinds of fun stuff. And we get to meet our local farmers because all of you people that have watched here, and if you go to my Facebook page, you can find my GMO flyer because there's unhealthy food everywhere. They really hurt us with it. And so this is a way we can all come together and get to know everyone and get farm fresh hen eggs. And we can do all these things. So I'm really excited. So that's October 27th. And it's to celebrate Food Day. It's Food Day today. So happy Food Day, everyone. And as Mr. Parker and I, Mr. Broussard, always say, collect your food and collect your canned goods, just in case there's a solar storm or the grid goes down. Now, so that's the 27th, 2 to 6. So I'm really excited about that. And we'll have a report. Mr. Broussard and I are going to do a show strictly on that. So this is going to be fun. Now, the next thing is right here. Daily Advertiser, I was out just now outside of AOC, and I was smoking a cigarette, and I just looked, I glanced, and this is an important headline. And you have a sticker over the important headline. Now, that's disturbing to me because do you think the people who support your newspaper and their children, the people who pay you for ads in their newspaper, do you think citizens of Acadiana are that silly and that they don't deserve the real news? So you put a sticker right here over the headline? I mean, that insults us because we want to see the headline. And, I mean, there's a place right here where you can stick your little sticker. I mean, right here. So, I mean, just please don't do that to us because we're smarter than that and you should respect us by showing us the main headline. Thank you. Now I'm going to play a tape of an interview with Mr. Montel Williams on the Satan Spy tanks that our mayor, Joey Durrell's been, and Corporal Mouton and Jason Brown of the Advocate have been discussing and that we're trying to stop. But God bless you all, and I'll be back next week with more council news. There's so much news with the federal court news, the plaintiffs and the defendants, the plaintiffs against Lafayette Consolidated Government as far as this whole police fiasco goes and all these allegations, and that's it, but roll it, Mr. Editor. Because we want to stop these things. We do. We do. And thank you, Mr. Parker. Thank you. I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana. And we live in such a great city. We live in such the most beautiful place. But today we're discussing tyranny in Lafayette, Louisiana. And it's a severe problem, and I've uncovered an article And so today I would like to welcome my guest. His name is Montel Davis. Montel, thanks so much for talking to me about tyranny today. Thank you. Well, Mr. Davis, in world, I was doing some research the other night, America, and I found some information in regards to our Lafayette Police Department and a little beauty that they're sticking up on the north side of this beautiful area here in town, in Lafayette, Louisiana. I'm going to read the article that I found. It was written by the Advocate, and it's extremely disturbing. And I want all people in America and the world to know that you need to research this immediately, because it's infiltration of Homeland Security, and they don't uphold an oath to the Constitution. They hate you. They unleash colleges of Sandusky's out, and they put their hands in our children's underwear. So we have a feeling that these things are courtesy of the federal government. Part of these, what I'm about to read to you about, these police tanks, these wheeled tanks, these spy surveillance tanks, which is just unconstitutional, and people have a right to privacy. So, Mr. Davis, here's the article, okay? I'm going to read it. Okay, it was found in the Advocate. Lafayette. Since it was unveiled in January, the Lafayette Police Department's Armadillo Surveillance Unit has been deployed more than 60 times in locations across the city, officials said this week. Now, here is what they're talking about. The Armadillo Unit. Straight from hell. Right there. Sirens. Our Mayor Joey Jarrell in Lafayette, Louisiana, fondling it, loving it, making it feel, it's just beautiful, it's sexy, it spies. I'm going to get back to my article. So, the Lafayette police spokesman, Corporal Paul Mouton, called the unit the department's eyes on the street. I mean, the only eyes we need on us are God's. Thank you very much. The armored truck, is equipped with surveillance cameras, which allows officers to leave the truck unmanned in front of problem homes, street corners, and in nuisance areas. Nuisance areas. Mr. Davis is from the north side of Lafayette. I've worked on the north side of Lafayette. I'm not scared of anybody on the north side of Lafayette. It is beautiful. There's grandmothers and babies on the north side of Lafayette. So have you seen this truck?
Yeah, I've seen it plenty of times.
You've seen it plenty of times? On what streets, Mr. Davis?
On San Antoine.
San Antoine.
Yes, mostly there.
That's where it is.
Yeah.
And so, how?
And right in the middle of our park.
Okay, right in the middle of a park where children play.
In the middle.
Oh, okay. Now these things are equipped with cameras. Okay, they take 24/7 footage of little babies playing in the streets, and grandmothers and babies having coffee on their front porch. It is just insane. So say there's an apparent crime problem. Let me get back to the article. It is equipped with surveillance cameras, which allows officers to leave the truck unmanned in front of problem homes. There's no such thing as a problem home. Well, maybe there is, but for every problem there is in a house, there's grandparents and babies. Not just because there's somebody in the house that's prone to violence or has their issues does not mean that the whole house is a problem, and I take that personally. This article is just revolting when it comes to human beings. How dare you talk about any human being like that? It's just sick. Okay, nuisance areas. Well, I look at it this way. You call it a nuisance area. Well, what lives in an area? People live in the area. So if the area is a nuisance, well, then you're calling the people, my people, a nuisance. His people a nuisance. Your people a nuisance. Because these are in your town, folks, no matter where you are. It is time we get on the phone and we say it's unconstitutional. The federal government and Homeland Security is not for our people. Our city councils are. Now, the unit's deployment in January was delayed while the department opted to install additional surveillance features. So they're not done with it, Mr. Davis. They're not done loading these things up with cameras. They're not done with the additional. What else do they want to put in there? I mean, these things are so huge. They can fit police. They can fit weaponry. They can probably fit, God only knows how many people they can be detained, black bag, and thrown away because the National Defense Authorization Act, totally illegal and unconstitutional. No thanks to Mitt Romney and all the traitors and sellout, treasonous people who have totally just annihilated us with the NDAA. We need to pray, folks. Now, there's something that's hooked up to the battery that continues to drain it. So this is a battery draining your tax dollars every second of the damn day to spy on these fine folks. And if you don't think that they're going to send these out to other neighborhoods, folks, you are sadly mistaken. These are the ultimate spy traps, and disgusting in nature. A technical support team will travel to Lafayette to figure out what device is tapping into the power source. Probably the 80 cameras in there. You know, imagine, little baby's playing in the park. He says it's by a park. And a little camera on that little baby. Who reviews the footage? Would you like to know who reviews the footage of your people? Hello.
First off, I just want to say there isn't any crime rate whatsoever around my neighborhood, so I don't know why it's predominantly children. So
Say
people
that to
around
the
my
camera.
age that mostly goes in the park and plays basketball. That's about it.
This is not acceptable. He says the violence is not even all that much, yet they send this truck out there.
There isn't any violence.
God.
Any that I have seen. So
And you're on St. Antoine. What other roads do you travel, Mr. Davis, in Lafayette?
pretty much University, Willow, that's pretty much the most.
When you hear violence on the Hurt Baby Stream News, where does violence take place on the north side?
I don't.
See, you don't see, it's all contrived. I don't care if there is violence.
It's all over the place.
Our local police can handle this. Don't insult our police all over this country and all over the world, saying that they can't deter crime with their smiles. They can drive through that town twice a day and love up on grannies and smile to the children. They're adequately trained to deter crime. A patrol car going through there a couple of times a day is going to deter the crime when there is no need for this. Our policemen, what an insult to our police. Our police would be happy to do it, especially when they're all friends with our council members. There is no need for this truck Cameron out, this unconstitutional, steal your rights, steal our rights, and harm our children's spy truck, wheeled tank from hell. Now, here we go. The areas chosen so far were locations that had various issues involving criminal activity or quality of life issues. To hell with your quality of life issues. Some people are hoarders. Some people are dirty. You have no right to come into my house and tell me how to live. I mean, it does not mean that the quality of life. You have no right over what my definition of quality life is. Feds or any bureaucrat or any governing body. It's just absolutely insane. Until your house starts stinking so bad or is to the point of rotting and upsetting your neighbors, within maybe. How do you feel about that aspect? Quality of life in a home. Is that the government's business?
No, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they're not telling you that that's the reason why they're putting it there.
Yes.
I would at least feel better knowing that they told us when they didn't. Or not that I know of, because I didn't know that. I didn't know why they parked from there.
Well, now you know, okay? But of course, how come we don't hear this stuff on Channel 10? How come they don't investigate the truck? How come they don't come out and they're absolute betrayers? Investigate the truck. How many cameras are in the truck? How many pairs of handcuffs are in the truck? Who services the truck? How many policemen can you fit in the truck? How much weaponry is in the truck? How many more surveillance tech grid from hell did they add to the truck? Who gave us money for the truck? How is the truck affiliated with Homeland Security? What are some questions you have in regards to a reporter that's supposed to report for us?
We're back, folks. At the break between shows, one of our callers requested, one of our viewers called in and requested, put it that way, that I talk briefly about Benghazi, to keep that in the forefront of your conscience. As you recall, several weeks ago, U.S. Ambassador to Libya was assassinated in a rather organized and it turned out fairly large attack on the consular grounds there in Benghazi, Libya. The ambassador was killed, one of his aides and 2 Navy SEALs were also killed. The SEALs were not there officially with the ambassador's entourage. They stepped in when they saw trouble brewing. They stepped in to try and help protect the ambassador. Immediately after this event, we were given a detailed write-up of what has now come out in the conventional media about this. The problem was that we didn't have confirmation of it at the time. So now, of course, the conventional controlled codependent media has decided to hit this thing, at least parts of them. The Fox News parts and maybe some of the others have thrown some stuff out there. The Obama administration initially said this was not a terrorist incident. This was a spontaneous demonstration against that alleged independent video that was posted on YouTube, I believe it was, or one of those things like that, where it was critical of Islam, and the Islamic fundamentalists were, quote, offended, unquote. There are several coincidences about that. One is, first of all, the violence at the Benghazi consular grounds occurred before the demonstrations started against that video. The video has not been widely seen by a lot of people. And normally folks will send me links to those kinds of things, and apparently nobody's found it because they didn't send it to me. And also, there's some doubt as to the authenticity of that video with regard to who supposedly put it out there. So what it looks like to us now on the surface is that this thing was a contrived event, particularly in light of the fact that there are other folks on full-blown websites that have come off with far more inflammatory discussions about Islam than was detailed in this thing, in what people claim was in this thing that set off the riots. So apparently some obscure video was seen by a bunch of people over there, but entire websites that are devoted to criticizing Islam are not seen by these same people. Okay? What's going on here? Well, this whole thing was contrived. It was the Benghazi attack was the result of fairly careful planning. For example, they used a mortar, and they had the location where the ambassador was taken to, his emergency shelter, was targeted by mortars immediately. As soon as he arrived there, they hit it with mortars. Okay? They didn't do this spontaneously. You don't just take a mortar and start dropping rounds down the tube and expect them to hit what you're aiming at until you either get registration rounds downrange and can walk the rounds into the target, or somebody had already paced off the distances to that building earlier on, and they had everything they needed to basically lay in the mortar. And some people suggested that it was actually laid in by GPS. Okay? Now that's very easy to do, but not by unsophisticated mobs of rebels that might have had the mortar left over from when they overthrew, or allegedly overthrew, Gaddafi. Okay? So Benghazi that situation is very, very strange, very suspicious. The ambassador that was killed had been over there to try and round up the weaponry that had been given to these rebels to fight the Gaddafi regime with, And there's some speculation that he was killed because he found out some stuff about the suppliers, what was supplied to, and who was getting the weapons that he wasn't supposed to find out about. So the bottom line is it's a very peculiar situation, and as of now, Hillary Clinton has basically, in the words of the Fox News hounds, well, not news hounds, the Fox alleged news reporters, has fallen on her sword and taken responsibility for what happened, because Foggy Bottom, the State Department, definitely blew it. Now, the only question is, did they blow it on orders of higher up? They had a formal request from that ambassador to beef up security before the incident. I don't recall how many days ahead of time, but they had plenty of time to get extra people in there, Marines or what have you, because there's always some Navy, especially a crisis situation like was in existence at the time in Libya. They would have had, there was a Navy vessel close by that could have landed Marines fairly quickly by helicopter, but they refused him because said Foggy Bottom State Department determined that there's no real threat. We don't need to worry about it. Well, in this day and age, for any government official to think that they back in Washington know more about what's going on the ground where there's a trouble spot like that, they know more than the people who are actually on the ground, what does that tell you about their leadership? Okay? They have no leadership ability. They are stupid, or they are evil, or they wanted it to happen, or all of the above. Okay? So this thing is very bad. It is a very, if this had happened in certain other presidents' administrations, the Secretary of State in all likelihood would have been kicked out, and or somebody below, some undersecretary in charge. Like there's this woman that was testifying at a hearing. She would have been, she was the one in direct chain of command. Another incident happened that we mentioned earlier at the same time, mentioned on a previous show. The ambassador to Egypt, when things started getting hot in Egypt, she, another female, is that a coincidence? No. Another female decided not to let the Marines in the Egyptian embassy have loaded weapons. Does she know what the purpose of the Marines is? Well, anyway, the Benghazi situation is bad. What happened was bad, and what's coming out now, the truth is finally coming out. And of course, what the administration is saying, initially, this wasn't we didn't know this was a quote terrorist act. Well, actually, it depends on your definition of a terrorist. Okay, if it was a terrorist act, then they have certain things that they've got to do that they obviously didn't want to do militarily, and if it was just spontaneous, the spontaneous actions of a rioting mob, then that's a different story. Yeah, we still don't know what all was involved with this thing, so we'll see. But it definitely impacts upon the credibility of anything coming out of the Obot administration. In keeping with government in general, I've got an article here that details something that we've been watching, but there's been very little come out about it, but it's starting to reveal itself. It's called the fusion centers. And the fusion centers I'd mentioned on a previous show, maybe last week, because I didn't have a chance to go into great detail in this article, what's revealed in this article, and it was in the Advocate October 4th. Intelligence effort tracks more citizens than terrorists. That headline right there tells you that the media is starting, certain aspects of the media are starting to have enough of this dictatorial police state that's ruling the country. Okay? Intelligence effort tracks more citizens than terrorists. In fact, the fusion centers, which were created in the aftermath of 9/11, and somewhat in a confused fashion, were done in every state It was supposed to blend federal agencies with state and local to keep track of, especially terrorism or potential terrorism, but also other criminal enterprises. Okay? Multi-billion dollar information sharing program created in the aftermath of 9/11 has improperly collected information about innocent Americans and produced little valuable intelligence on terrorism, a Senate report concludes. It portrays an effort that ballooned far beyond anyone's ability to control. Now, of course, the Department of Homeland Tyranny disputes this and says that's an incorrect conclusion. Says it's inaccurate. Well, because of convoluted grants process set up by Congress, Homeland Security Tyranny officials don't know how much they have spent in their decade-long effort to set up so-called fusion centers in every state. Government estimates range from less than $300 million to $1.4 billion in federal money, plus much more invested by state and local governments. How can they not have that correct? How can it range from less than $300 million to $1.4 billion? That's a big range, people. That's bizarre. Federal funding is pegged at about 20 to 30%. So if federal funding is 20 to 30%, then what's the other 80 to 70% of this spending? Where'd that come from? And was it spent? Congress is unlikely to pull the plug because whether or not it stops terrorists, the program means politically important money for state and local governments. Well, there you go again. Pork barrels. More pork spending. Any excuse to take and have another bond issue and get the Federal Reserve to print up more money, as we explained earlier, to just pump into state and local governments so they can act like our current Congress critter tells us about all of the money that he's gotten for this district, when in reality he's not supposed to be getting money for this district. He's supposed to be representing this district in Washington as a congressman from Louisiana, but not by, of, and for Louisiana. This is the problem with our democracy, as I mentioned earlier. These congressmen are not supposed to be doing this. They're supposed to be representing this state in doing the business of Washington, D.C., i.e. the United States of America in total, not Louisiana in Washington, okay? A Senate Homeland Security Subcommittee reviewed more than 600 unclassified reports over a one-year period and concluded that most had nothing to do with terrorism. Subcommittee investigation could identify no reporting which uncovered a terrorist threat, nor could it identify contribution that any fusion center reporting made to disrupt an active terrorist plot. So in other words, their original intent has not been fulfilled in 10 years. They have not disrupted a terrorist plot or made any contribution to the disruption of a terrorist plot, according to the Senate committee. Inside Homeland Tyranny, officials have long known there were problems with the reports coming out of fusion centers, the report shows. Quote, you'd have some guys, the information you'd see from them, you'd scratch your head and say, what planet are you from, unquote, unidentified Homeland Security official told Congress. Until this year, federal reports officers received 5 days of training. The guys working in there received 5 days of training, were never tested or graded afterward. States have had criminal analysis centers for years, but the story of the fusion centers began in the frenzied aftermath of September 11, 2001. For better collaboration amongst government agencies. Oh well, though fusion centers receive money from the federal government, they're operated independently. Counterterrorism money started flowing to states in 2003, but it wasn't until late 2007 that the Bush administration told states how to run the centers. Okay, well, what's the point then? What is the point of these fusion centers? Obviously, they're not doing what they were originally set up to do. I mean, it may be a convenient place where federal, state, and local officials can get together and discuss things, but beyond that, what good have they done? What good? Well, George Will column from August bears on this. Government needs a diet. Okay? Because the possibility of effectively supervising government varies inversely with the government's size. In other words, the possibility of effectively supervising government will get less. There'll be less possibility of effectively supervising government the bigger it gets. Okay? So does government's lawfulness. In other words, the bigger they get, the less lawful they are. Okay? And we told you time and again about this. What part of this do you not understand, people? Your government is out of control, constitutionally and otherwise. Not just economically, but constitutionally too. Okay? This iron law of Leviathan is illustrated by a dispiriting story. It begins with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, aka the stimulus package. Remember that one? Supposedly temporary response to an economic emergency. Because nothing is as immortal as a temporary government program. The communities putting prevention to work, a creature of the stimulus, was folded into the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act of 2010, Obamacare. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, working through this CPPW, Communities Putting Prevention to Work, dispersed money to 31 states and District of Columbia to fight, among other things, the scourge of soda pop. The scourge of soda pop. What the hell does the federal government have to do with soda pop? What business is that of theirs, whether or not you drink soda pop, and how much? Okay? In Cook County, Illinois, recipients using some of the $16 million CDC grant educated policymakers on the link between sugar-sweetened beverages, SSBs, and obesity, economic impact of an SSB tax, and the importance of investing revenue into prevention. Prevention of what? Prevention of the use of SSBs? Sugar-sweetened beverages? Are we going to classify them in the same category as marijuana? According to Philadelphia City website, a $15 million, that's another one. Okay, first one was Chicago. This is $15 million to Philadelphia to fund efforts to campaign for a 2-cent per ounce excise tax on SSBs. In Los Angeles, $2.2 million grant for obesity prevention funded training for grantees on media advocacy against SSBs. Remember though, folks, this is not your taxpayer money at work, okay? Your taxpayer money goes to the interest that they pay on the money that they're borrowing for this crap. You're not paying for this stuff yourself, okay? The Federal Reserve Bank is creating the money out of thin air, and or they're creating it out of bonds that they then sell to some schmuck foreign country, which is getting fewer and fewer, lesser and lesser money's coming from those sources. But the $3 million grant was used to educate leaders and decision makers about and promote the effective implementation of a tax to substantially increase the price of beverages containing caloric sweetener. Rhode Island Department of Health used a $3 million grant for educating key decision makers to serve as champions of specific pricing and procurement strategies to reduce consumption of SSBs. Sounds like something nasty, doesn't it? SSBs, it's something you ought to get a vaccination against, huh? Sugar-sweetened beverages, if you're just tuning in. In government speak, educating is synonymous with lobbying. Clearly, some of the $230 million in this anti-obesity grant was spent in violation of the law, which prohibits the use of federal funds to influence in any manner an official of any government to favor, adopt, or oppose by vote or otherwise any legislation, law, ratification, policy, or appropriation. But leaving legalities aside here, is such nutrition activism effective? Not according to an economics professor at California Polytech State University, Michael Marlowe, and Shirzad Abdukadurov, must be from Kyrgyzstan, of the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, writing in Regulation Quarterly, Can Behavioral Economics Combat Obesity? Publication of the Libertarian Cato Institute, they powerfully question the assumptions underlying paternalistic policies such as using taxes to nudge individuals to make consumption choices that serve their real but unrecognized interests. That is, drinking fewer SSBs. Okay, so it's in your interest not to drink more SSBs, to drink less SSBs. And the government's going to spend $230 million across the country to make sure you know that you're not supposed to drink all that stuff. In the meantime, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, all those others are spending all kinds of money to get you to buy more of it. How much? Oh, okay. Well, it keeps the economy going, though. Paternalists wield two weapons, mandating the provision of more information, that is, calorie counts for restaurant menu items, and increasing the cost of bad decisions. Meaning those the paternalists disapprove of. Marlowe and Abdukadurov respond, quote, most obese individuals know they're heavy, and many of the foods they eat are high calorie. They also face the stigma often linked to obesity. They hardly need the government to give them additional incentives to lose weight. People aware of their mistakes also have strong incentives to correct them, unquote. Research indicates that overweight individuals have reasonably close to accurate estimates of the increased health risks and decreased life expectancy associated with obesity. Hence, the weakness of mandated information as a modifier of behavior. A study in New York City mandated posting calorie counts in restaurant chains concluded that while 28% of patrons said the information influenced their choices, researchers could not detect a change in calories purchased after the law. So in other words, people knew, but they still kept with the same habits, even after all this research and all this information was put out there. Other research findings include a study of nearly 20,000 students from kindergarten through 8th grade found among those with easy access to high-calorie snacks in schools, 35.5% were overweight, compared with 34.8% of students in schools without such snacks. So, the snacks only accounted for less than 1% increase, okay, in the overweight folks in the schools where it was accessible. Isn't that interesting? Less than 1% increase. So the snacks being available in the schools, I'm surprised by that myself. You would think because they're available in schools, they're going to use them, and it's going to contribute much more heavily to obesity. But it doesn't. Wrong. Nutrition policy is replicating a familiar pattern. Increased taxes on alcohol and tobacco mostly decrease consumption by light users, not the heavy users who are the social problem and whose demand is relatively inelastic. In other words, the children that are eating the high-calorie stuff anyway, that are overweight anyway, okay, yeah, maybe because of all the high-calorie stuff, but it won't matter that it's a few cents more per candy bar or per soda pop. Okay, it won't matter that there's posted signs everywhere. It won't change their behavior patterns. They're already addicted, which we know that sugar is addictive to begin with. But of course, these non-sugar substitutes, most of them are addictive also and put on weight, especially NutraSweet, which is toxic on top of everything else, highly toxic and addictive on top of everything else. It's a chemical addiction. The robust market in diet books, weight loss centers, exercise equipment, athletic clubs, health foods between 87 and 04, 35,272 new food products were labeled no fat or low fat. Refutes the theory that there's some market failure government must correct. But as long as there are bureaucrats who consider themselves completely rational and informed, there will be policies to substitute government supervision of individuals for individual personal responsibility. In other words, the government bureaucrat knows what's better for you than you do. Okay? Even though you have determined that, yeah, I want no-fat or low-fat substitutes in rather large quantities. Between 87 and 2004, over 35,000 more new food products that are in those categories. But that's not good enough. Okay? Obviously, you're too stupid to be able to use those products. Well, wait a minute. They wouldn't be produced if you weren't buying those products, government bureau rats. That's like the old... You hear the thing constantly in the comic strips and other places, jokes on the internet, where somebody goes into the fast food joint and orders a giant burger with extra cheese and bacon and mega order of greasy French fries, and the side is going to be a fried pie. Oh, and give me a diet drink. I mean, hey, come on, people. You're going to change human nature with government? Well, government is working on it. As the soft paternalism of incentives fails, there'll be an increasing resort to the hard paternalism of mandates and proscriptions. Hence the increasing need to supervise our supervisors, the government. And he's exactly right. Right now, they're just a little bit of tax here, a little bit of tax there, or they ban certain sizes of soft drinks in these certain paternalistic dictatorships like New York City, okay, where what's-his-face took it on himself to ban arbitrarily and by executive edict, by executive dictate, certain sizes of soft drinks. Well, okay, so let's see. The biggest I can get is a third the size of that big honking thing I used to get. So I'm going to take my bucket with me, and I'm going to buy 3 of the ones, the biggest I can get, and I'm going to dump them in my bucket and just use my long straw. All right, come on, idiot. What are you going to do next? Because that's not working. Your project to ban this stuff, I guarantee, is not working. So what's next? Well, we're going to have a soda pop cop in every convenience store and fast food joint. And nobody can go back more than once to refill their drink at the drink bar. You know how you can keep refilling your drink constantly at these soda pop, the soda pop fountain at these fast food joints? We're going to put a cop that's going to, he's going to stamp your hand every time you already got one. It's individual choice. If you want to be obese, there may be other reasons besides simply diet. Okay? Granted, that's what most of the reasons are for obesity in this society. That's not the only reason. There are multitudinous ones that all can be playing on this thing. And of course, the artificial sweeteners, NutraSweet, contributes to obesity amongst the users, in addition to being addictive. But the government approved it. Okay? Actually, they had to hire, who was it? The former War Department Secretary of Bush? Cheney? Not Cheney, the other one. Rumsfeld. Rumsfeld was hired to get that thing through Congress. He was hired as a lobbyist for that outfit to get the NutraSweet approved. Call back, caller. Just missed you. Again, our high-tech, gee-whiz garbage here in the studio. Here we go. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air. You there, caller? Do we have a caller?
Yeah, Tom, I want to thank you for the effort that you're putting forth tonight to educate the population about the budget deficit.
Oh, thanks, Don.
About the debt, about the making of money out of thin air by the Federal Reserve.
Oh, yeah.
About how we're borrowing money and the dire straits we're in. And you've even proposed some solutions. And you've done a great work. And I hope you can hit this theme often. I mean, at least once every show, because basically the public has to be educated about the real debt crisis and what's going to happen when the U.S. finally crashes. It's going to bring the rest of the world down with it probably, and it's going to be real bad. So the answer is prayer and education, and that's what you're doing. And I want to thank you for the efforts that you're putting forth to keep the people minds on what the real problem is.
Yeah.
Now, in the debates, you might notice they preemptively they didn't want to talk about the real problem. You notice that?
Well, yeah, they're not going to. I've seen it with especially Obama. Okay, there's been a couple of times where somebody's asked him a very pointed and good question, and not at the debates. It was when doing town hall meetings or in the crowd with just shaking hands with some group, and he was asked on camera some very pointed questions that were good ones that he should have had a ready answer for them, but he gave nothing. He gave no information. He shrugged it off. One of them, he called the young lady sweetie, and mumbled some BS. It was so lame. I couldn't believe this guy. Of course, he has proven himself non-presidential. This last debate, one of the comments he made was extremely sarcastic, and I mean, I agree with him that this notion, it was dealing with the War Department and spending, for example, on more ships, and I've used the same argument myself, but not, I wasn't even as sarcastic as he was, and I can get sarcastic. And this guy, he's not presidential.
He looked like a little teenager who is angry and frustrated and doesn't know what to do with himself. Did you notice he looked really angry?
Yeah, the guy is running scared.
Yeah,
Is what we've heard through the grapevine. Now, what he will do about it is anybody's guess at this point. Now, his handlers will stop him from doing anything that they don't want him to do if they can catch him before he does it.
Yeah.
But see, there's stuff he can do on spur of the moment that can cause a lot of trouble before they catch it, and by then it'll be too late.
It's kind of scary. But don't tell him what he'll do.
Yeah, this is why I have not given up on the notion that there may not be an election in 2 weeks.
I agree with you.
It still hasn't happened yet.
He might declare martial law. We don't know what he'll do. He's like a loose cannon, you know.
Oh, definitely.
He doesn't know what he's going to do.
I agree. He's got all these advisors that are lame as can be. His number one advisor is Valerie Jarrett. I've told you all about her before, which kind of surprised me when I saw the review, or saw the author of this book about him recently, about his leadership, which the guy didn't intend to do this. He started out, it was going to be basically a fair appraisal. He wasn't going to be partisan about it, and he wasn't. His sources were all Democratic, for crying out loud. He had no avowed Republicans that he used as a source.
Did you see that movie 2015?
No. But
Tom, it is I mean, I know all the facts that are in the movie, but the way Denise D'Souza put it together in the movie, it is just unbelievably good. I would like to recommend to everyone to check that DVD out at Walmart or wherever you can get it. It's called 2015. It's all about Obama, how he was formed, why he's the way he is. Basically, he's an anti-colonialist who's trying to destroy America because we're the biggest colonial power. But let's get back to the real problem. That's not the real problem is the debt.
Oh yeah.
The amount of money.
Oh yeah.
That's what you're hammering on tonight. And I just want to thank you for that. And I'll
Sure
let you
thing.
go.
Okay, thanks, Don. One thing that's come up about the debt that Don reminded me of there's been little written up about this, but there's been a lot discussed at certain levels. And it's another thing I should say that I agree with the Obama-istas about. That is that the debt is a serious threat to our national security. You know, you're always hearing about terrorism being a threat to security, etc. It's not, first of all. Okay? Terrorism pales in insignificance to the national debt as far as a threat to national security goes. Excuse me. The national debt is owed to people that do not have your best interests in mind. The international banksters, excuse me, many of whom are not Americans, most of whom are not Americans, by the way, all right? Most of the banks that own a share in the Federal Reserve are foreign banks, European banks, no less. Not Asian banks, not Chinese banks, but European banks, British banks, Luxembourg banks, Belgian banks, not American banks. Okay? I don't know if I doubt there's even an Italian bank that owns part of the Federal Reserve. And our founders warned us about this situation. Not just the ones we like, but even Alexander Hamilton warned us about this type of situation existing, because what does the Bible say about neither a borrower nor a lender be? You are beholden to that individual or that group or that bank in this case to whom you owe the money. The federal government is beholden. And these people, as a result, wield unnatural, unconstitutional power over this nation. They can crash the economy just by simply printing up billions of dollars worth of Federal Reserve notes per month from now on. That can crash the economy. Oh, wait a minute. They are doing that. Excuse me. What's going to happen as a result? They're treading water right now. They're trying to keep the crash from occurring. It's like certain big corporations in this country that the only reason they're still around is because they're too big. Not too big to fail, but they're just so big that they're, by sheer inertia, they're keeping going. Okay? They have a profit margin, some of these big corporations, in the single-digit percentage. In other words, they're only making 1 or 2 or 3% per year on what they sell or whatever product it is they deal in. Their profit is very low as far as the percentage goes. But the vast volume of what they're dealing with, in some cases, let's say they've got 2,000 outlets around the country, and each outlet is doing several $1 million worth of business per year, gross. Well, add it up, do the math. And they're making off of that, off the top, 1 to 2% maybe. That's why they still exist. All right, they're inefficient as heck. They don't have to be efficient. They just have to have people at the top that will keep doing things to maintain the status quo. And the same thing goes with the federal government. They're too big. They're on inertia now. They're just kind of rocking along. And they're going to fail. They're going to fail quietly, a la the Great Depression of '29. The crash of '29 that was minor compared to the overall situation. That was a symptom. That wasn't what caused the depression, people. The crash of Wall Street in '29 only was a symptom. It was not, you might call it the trigger effect maybe, but something else would have started it had that not been what began the depression officially. And the depression didn't end until after World War II. Okay? Until the U.S. was producing consumer goods and things that were of some value beyond military hardware, hey, we weren't out of the depression yet until we were supplying stuff overseas. Yeah.
After the war, the government reduced spending by 67%.
Yeah.
And the economy grew.
Yeah, the economy grew after the war because the government reduced spending by 67%. They'd been on a war footing, but they still only reduced it by 67%. Okay? Back then, the gross domestic product as such versus the debt was a lot less, even with most government spending being for military hardware, and military hardware does not produce wealth. Oh, it does for the people making it. Okay, it gives them a job, but that's it. It's not sustainable wealth. Well, we're out of time as usual, so we'll be back next week. In the meantime, pray hard, pray often, and get involved with doing something worthwhile, and I don't mean voting or campaigning. They're going to decide who wins this election, people. You're not. You have no say in it.